Okay, so let's dive into a book that was so controversial it literally ended its author's career as a novelist. We're talking about Thomas Hardy's masterpiece of tragedy, Jude the Obscure. So this thing comes out in 1895, right? And the Victorian public, they were absolutely scandalized. The backlash was so intense that Thomas Hardy, this famous author, just stopped. He never wrote another novel after this one. Wild, right? So what on earth was in this book that caused such a complete firestorm? To really get it, we have to kind of peel back the layers. Think of it like a perfectly engineered tragic machine. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take it apart piece by piece, starting with the gut punch of a story right on the surface. Okay, so first up, the plot. At its heart, Jude the Obscure is just a deeply personal story. It's about two people and how the world around them systematically, and I mean utterly, crushes every single one of their dreams. So first, you meet Jude Fawley. He's our hero, a working-class stonemason, but he's got the soul of a scholar. This guy is so driven. He teaches himself Latin and Greek in his spare time. All he wants is to escape his social class and study at the great University of Christminster, which is basically Hardy's fictional version of Oxford. And then you've got Sue Bridehead, his cousin. She is absolutely Jude's intellectual match. I mean, she's what they called a new woman, super intelligent, a total free thinker, and she questions everything. We're talking traditional marriage, religion, the whole shebang. And right there, you can see the central conflict starting to brew. They're like two sides of the same coin. Jude is desperate to get into the system, the one that's keeping him out. But Sue, she wants to be completely free from that same system. So you got this incredibly deep connection between them, but you can just feel it. They're pretty much doomed from the start. And from there, their story is just a relentless downward spiral. I mean, it's one failure after another. Jude gets rejected by the university he idolizes. He gets trapped in this miserable first marriage. Then, when he and Sue finally get together, they're basically social outcasts for daring to live together without being married. It all builds and builds until this absolutely unbearable tragedy involving their children, which leads to the final, devastating end where Jude just dies, alone and completely broken. But here's what's so brilliant and also so brutal about this book. None of this feels random. It doesn't feel like just a string of bad luck. Hardy built this story so meticulously. He engineered it to make their despair feel completely and totally inevitable. It really is a tragedy by design. The way he does it is pretty clever. He uses this episodic structure where it's just one hit after another. With every new failure, he's slowly grinding down their hopes. You can feel their world getting smaller and smaller, their options just vanishing, until, finally, there's just no way out. But there's one specific structural device that is just the key. It's the thing that really locks this whole tragedy into place. It's this brilliant pattern he weaves through the whole story, something we can call a reversal of belief. What he does is, as things get worse and worse, he has Jude and Sue literally swap worldviews. Their suffering is so intense it forces them to become the very person the other one was at the beginning of the story. It's amazing. And this just shows their total spiritual and moral defeat so perfectly. You have Sue, the radical freethinker, who gets so shattered by tragedy that she runs back to the safety of the very religious rules she hated. And at the exact same time, Jude, the guy who wanted to be a clergyman, completely loses his faith and turns into this bitter critic of it all. It's like they're passing each other on a staircase, going in opposite directions. A perfect, tragic, mirror image collapse. Okay, let's peel back another layer here, because Hardy isn't just telling us a sad story. He's playing with us. He's messing with our expectations of what a novel is supposed to do, especially when it comes to the classic coming-of-age story. You know the genre I'm talking about, right? The Bildungsroman. It's that classic novel of formation. You've got a young hero, they struggle, they face challenges, but in the end, they grow up, learn some important lessons, and find their place in the world. It's all about successfully fitting in. And if you look at Jude's story, it seems to tick all the boxes. Youthful dreams? Check. Harsh dose of reality? Check. Big moral questions and struggles? Check. All the classic stages are there. You could even argue he does mature through all his suffering. But, and this is the big but, here's the twist. Hardy sets up this whole coming-of-age story and then pulls the rug out from under you. Jude's formation doesn't lead to him finding his place. It leads to his complete and utter destruction. He learns his place in the world, all right, and that place is an early grave.
And by doing that, Hardy turns this from just a sad story about one guy into this blistering critique of a society that has no room for someone like Jude.
Okay, so now we're getting to the very heart of it, the deepest, darkest, and most controversial layer of this entire novel. This is almost certainly what got everyone so fired up back in 1895, because the story isn't just a story. It's an argument, hidden in symbols. There's this really powerful interpretation from a scholar named Norman Holland Jr., and he argues that the characters, Jude and Sue, they're not just people. He says we should see them as symbols in a much bigger debate about morality itself. So here's how that thinking goes. Jude, he represents something older, maybe more natural, a way of life that sees no conflict between our physical desires and our spiritual ambitions. Sue, on the other hand, she's the modern spirit, rational, intellectual, wanting to be free from all the old rules. And what's the force that comes down and crushes them both? Well, in this view, it's the restrictive morality of institutional Christianity, which Hardy saw as a system that just suppresses everything that makes us human. And when you look at it that way, suddenly their suffering isn't just a series of unfortunate events. No, it's the inevitable, tragic result of a head-on collision between natural human impulses and an oppressive moral system. Their personal story becomes this massive symbolic attack on the very foundations of Victorian society. All right, so let's put all these pieces back together. You've got the plot, the structure, the twisted genre, the deep symbolism, and when you see them all working at once, you finally get why this novel isn't just sad, it's a devastating masterpiece. I mean, think about it. Every single layer works together perfectly. The gut-wrenching plot is held up by a narrative structure that makes you feel like doom is just around the corner. That structure is used to flip the whole coming-of-age story on its head. And that delivers this powerful symbolic critique of society's moral code. It is, like I said before, a perfect, brutal machine for creating tragedy. And that, really, is the biggest takeaway. Hardy isn't just looking for your tears or your sympathy here. He's grabbing you by the shoulders and forcing you to ask a really uncomfortable question. Are the very institutions we build to create order, things like marriage, the church, universities, are they actually crushing the potential of the very people they're supposed to help? That's the question his perfectly designed tragedy leaves hanging in the air. It's a question about that constant tug-of-war between the individual and the system, and honestly, it's the reason why this book, written way back in 1895, still feels so urgent, so powerful, and, yeah, so incredibly relevant to our world today.